The world has its eyes glued to the U.S. election results, which still hang in the balance as of now, after U.S. President Donald Trump and his allies flooded social media with false claims of victory. Now, protesters took to the streets demanding that states count all the ballots in this election. Let's start with New York. Protesters chanted, "Demand democracy and every vote counts," as hundreds of people found their way through the city. Similar rallies also took place in Chicago, with a large sign saying, "Count every vote." People marched through the city's streets, and the outcome of the hard-fought contest for presidency remains undecided right now, which has now stirred concerns that prolonged uncertainty could spark further conflict and civil unrest. 200 people also gathered at Oakland City after President Donald Trump called for a halt to ballot tabulations, with the election outcome still unsettled. In Boston, as well as residents voiced the same sentiment. In fact, on Wednesday, Trump's campaign had claimed it had won Pennsylvania, where votes are still being counted. The claims come as Trump's lead in battleground states has evaporated, as more ballots are being counted across Michigan and Wisconsin. The counting process has taken longer than usual as a result of the pandemic and extraordinarily high voter turnout across America. Meanwhile, Philadelphians also expressed their disappointment on Wednesday morning after Election Day, because of the fact that results were not in yet and it wasn't clear who had won the White House.
I just don't understand this country at all. It should have been a clear victory for Joe Biden. It will be, I believe, but the fact that so many people supported the man who did not lead us during the coronavirus is outrageous. It's as if it didn't happen. 250,000 Americans dead because this guy can't figure out how to respond to it, and they voted for him anyway. I don't get it. I'm distraught. He should have been soundly defeated last night. But this is the system we have.
Kamala Harris also tweeted her support for the count all votes demand. Meanwhile, President Trump and his Democratic rival Joe Biden both still have possible paths to reach the much-needed 270 Electoral College votes to win the White House ultimately.
Look, we were compared to...
Now, we earlier spoke to our correspondent Jagrati Dave from Washington, D.C. Let's hear about her insights and break down the numbers game.
The Associated Press and other news organizations have called Michigan and Wisconsin for Joe Biden. Michigan has 16 electoral votes. Wisconsin has 10 electoral votes. It pushes Joe Biden further to that magic number 270. It increasingly makes Donald Trump's path to victory difficult. Now, as you were saying there, Donald Trump has launched legal challenges in 3 states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. And in Wisconsin, he's called for a recount. I beg your pardon, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia, he's launched legal challenges. In Wisconsin, he's asked for a recount because in that state, any results that are below 1%, where the lead is below 1%, you are allowed to call for a recount. And Joe Biden, according to the Associated Press, has a 0.624 percentage point lead out of nearly 3.3 million ballots counted. So Bill Stephen, Mr. Trump's campaign manager, said that the president is well within the threshold to request a recount, and we will immediately do so. Well, we're not sure what happens next. They've said that they've called for a recount, but it's not just this. It's the questioning of the mail ballots that are being processed in Pennsylvania, which is a state that allows mail-in ballots to be counted 3 days after election day. There are other states that have also had Supreme Court decisions in their favour, allowing them to count those postal votes after election day. President Trump has said that he wants to go to the Supreme Court and question this. We know that both sides are lawyering up with a view to, with a view to the fact that some of these results might be disputed. So really, so much of this is unprecedented. We have very little knowledge at this stage of really what's going to happen next.
Now, for more insights into the outcome of the U.S. election, which is still expected, senior journalist Ray Locker joins us live from Washington, D.C. Ray, welcome and thanks for joining us on this broadcast. Now, this race is turning out to be quite a nail-biter. Joe Biden is nearing the 270 electoral vote mark, and even now 6 states remain too close to call. And now Trump is claiming that there is fraud within the vote as well. So can we expect a result, and what are the political pundits in the U.S. predicting so far?
Well, I think most people believe by probably the end of the day tomorrow we'll have final votes from Nevada, Pennsylvania, probably Georgia, and Arizona. And at the way the trends are going right now, I think it's very possible that Biden wins Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, all 4. Maybe a little bit of wiggle room in Nevada. We're not really sure where the outstanding votes are. But Biden has been closing the gap in all of those states, just as he did in Wisconsin and Michigan. So I think he'll have more than 270 electoral votes, possibly up to 306.
Right.
And there is no sign of fraud.
Right. Now, President Trump, as you just said, claimed yesterday in a shocking statement that some legitimate tallying efforts should stop, and he even asserted victory early on. So what was he hoping to achieve from this tactic? Is he afraid that Joe Biden may actually defeat him?
Oh, I think he's obviously afraid of that. He's trying to muddy the issue to get it into the courts somehow, where he thinks he has a favorable advantage in the Supreme Court. But all of these states have their own rules, the way they do things. Nothing has happened out of the ordinary. And it's important to remember in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the Republican-controlled state legislatures would not change the law to allow the counting of mail ballots early, as they do in other states like Florida. In Florida, you had almost a complete count within an hour after the polls closed. In these other states, they can only count those ballots after all the other ballots are closed. And the Republicans knew that they were going to have an advantage in election day votes, the votes cast yesterday, because those were the ones counted first. And then all of a sudden they want to stop the vote, saying that the other ballots were somehow fraudulent, which is just not true.
Right.
And even other Republican elected officials pushed back on the president, calling that extremely irresponsible.
Right. Now, Ray, let's talk of some election promises. While the Trump administration has exited the very controversial Paris Agreement on climate change, Biden has vowed to rejoin it should he win. So how is this being viewed in the face of climate change?
Well, I think anybody who considers climate change a serious concern, and I think it's a majority of Americans, look upon that favorably. There was no really any kind of public demand to get out of the Paris Accord. That was something that Trump wanted to do because he doesn't like agreements like that. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of opposition to us re-entering that. The major concern is if you're in an agreement like that, how does it affect American lives? Is their gasoline going to become more expensive? Are their utility bills going to become more expensive? And what we've actually seen over the last few years is a huge increase in the use of renewable fuels, wind and solar, and a big drop in the cost of those sources of power. And I expect that to continue, and I think it would have continued under any president.
Right. Ray, my final question for you as you wrap up our discussion. Is there a concern now across America that President Trump will not leave peacefully should he lose? Biden seems to be inching closer to the presidency while Trump makes legal challenges.
I think it's a lot of bluster and a lot of talk. I think when push comes to shove, President Trump will leave peacefully. Look, he can refuse to concede. It doesn't matter. Each state certifies its vote. And after in a period in December, they all come together and boom, they're all certified. At that point, Biden presumably is the president-elect. He can be sworn in, and if Trump doesn't want to leave the White House, come noon on January 20th, 2021, Biden will be president and Trump won't be president. He will have no authority to keep people from pulling him out of the White House if it comes down to it, which I don't believe it will.
Right. All right, Ray, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast, and for all your inputs. We, of course, at WION will be tracking the results closely.